As a species, humans have mastered energy to the level where it is, for all practical purposes, completely abundant. 200 years ago, no one could have imagined a world where energy was so accessible that most people would take it for granted. If you had asked the smartest person on Earth whether we could one day summon light with the flip of a switch, they would have said it was impossible, even if the brightest minds worked on it together for an eternity. But today, it's just that easy. Energy is everywhere, all around us, all of the time. Now, what if I told you that the same is about to happen with labor? We are standing at the gates of a future where the work needed to build the products we use, the services we rely on, and even the chores in our homes will be as effortlessly accessible as energy is today, enabling you to explore new frontiers and focus on what makes you truly human. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the audience almost didn't know when to clap. By the way, this is another episode of the AIandNewTech Podcast. We're reviewing this technology from Brent. He's the CEO of a humanoid robot company. So, and this particular robot is called Neo. So let's get into more specifics.
Thank you, Neo. You're the best. It's an amazing machine, right? Yeah. So I spent the last decade of my life working on building humanoid robots like Neo. Robots that will hopefully soon be able to do almost anything that we could imagine. Now, whether this is helping you with the dishes, helping you do your laundry, or whether this is helping your aging grandma, there's never really been a time better for robots. We have an aging population in need of help, and we have a large labor shortage across most of the global economy. And there's much, much more. But even more importantly, to me, these robots, they promise something greater than just the ability to solve the problems of today. They can solve things that we cannot do today. They can give us back things like time. And as these systems and AIs now become both physical and agentic, we can start to work towards a future where we actually have an abundance of labor. We can start towards lifting humanity out of this constant battle over scarcity of resources and create a world where everyone has what they need. And I think that will, to some extent, actually redefine what it means to be human. But since, I'd say, around year 1400, when Leonardo da Vinci made the mechanical man, that to me is kind of like the first example of a humanoid robot, these things have been mainly a thing of science fiction, not reality. But this is changing. The robots, they're actually here. And
So I'd just like to take a note here, right? So it's really changing. And I think the technology is changing in pace with, or just in time for everything else. So I've always stated in previous episode of this podcast, I've always stated the fact that most likely the real breakthrough is when AI is integrated into humanoid robots. Now, of course, this is not yet happening at scale, but it's definitely going to happen, and it's going to affect the workplace in a very unique way, like never seen before in human history. Now, let me break it down a little bit further. So, this is labor at scale, right? This is labor explosion. So, what this means is that if you have 100,000 robots that can work for 24 hours, 7 days a week, then you don't have to. Labor is no longer a problem. Labor becomes even cheaper, right? Because the whole conversation of shipping jobs around the world to make things cheaper. But with this, labor even becomes even more cheaper. Initially, it's going to become a little bit more expensive as the robots are learning, but it's going to eventually become cheaper. Now, having said that, so you have two things that are happening simultaneously. You have the intelligence explosion on one end of the spectrum. Then now you now have the labor explosion, right, on the other end of the spectrum. Both of the characteristics is that these things are going to make intelligence. So intelligence is cheaper. I don't have to think about everything. I don't have to rewrite that email myself. Now I can have an AI rewrite the email. I don't have to spend my intelligence doing certain things. So also now I don't have to spend my physical energy doing a lot of things. So it's going to save me time. It's going to save me energy. It's a brave new world. Let's hear him further. And by the way, his name is Brent. He's a Brent Borknish. Sorry if I don't pronounce the name well. He's Norwegian, and he's the CEO of a humanoid robot company, which is really, really interesting. So let's continue.
When I say here, I don't necessarily mean in videos. They're actually here in our homes. At least if you work at 1X, where I work, where we now have them in quite a few homes throughout the company. And already later this year, I hope some of you guys will have it in your home and join us on this journey. So that means Neo is now part of my daily routine. So it does some of the chores around the house. Some of this is autonomous. Some of this is done through remote operation as it's learning. And I talk to it. I treat it kind of like a butler, like a companion. It's part of the family. And I think it's actually incredibly interesting to also see how this social dynamic develops. Because it's, of course, incredibly useful and fun to have it do stuff I don't want to do around my home. But it's also really fun to see the beginning of, like, what will this relationship be between man and machine as these AIs become physical? Now, like I said, the hardware, it's actually here. It took us about a decade of very hard work, but also many people that came before us a lot of time to do the foundational research for us to now finally be able to build a machine that can do almost anything that a human can do. But it begs the big question, of course, when will they be fully autonomous? When will they actually become truly intelligent? And what is the path that will actually take us there? And I think this will be very obvious in retrospective. They need to live and learn among us. We actually need to take these machines and we need to adopt them. We need to put them into our society and let them learn just as we do. So the general convention has been, or general wisdom, that robots, they're going to first happen in factories. So we're going to put these robots into factories. They're going to do the dull, repetitive, dangerous tasks that they're good at. And as they do these repetitive tasks, they get better and better, right? They get more intelligent. And after some time, we can put them into our home. They will be able to do our laundry. They will build our skyscrapers. But this is actually categorically wrong. And we know because we actually tried that. So back in 2022, we took our previous generation wheeled humanoid, Eve, and we put it in the industry. And it actually went really well. We solved a lot of kind of narrow, specific tasks. And it got really good at them really fast. And then after about 20 to 50 hours, the robots, they just stopped learning. And if you think about it, it's not really rocket science. Because if you're doing the same task over and over every day, and it's the only thing you're doing, you're not going to get very intelligent. There's no information.
So this is something that I really want to speak to, which is even us as human beings. If you do the same things over and over again, it's not necessarily improving your cognitive abilities. So that's just a note for us as humans to always keep that in mind. So it's always good to learn new things. Having said that, he goes ahead to explain in detail how the robots need to become more intelligent, need to become more autonomous. So now you have agentic AI on one end of the spectrum, artificial intelligence. Now you have the advent of these humanoid robots. Now there's always the places to plug in artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence most likely can even accelerate the creation and making of these AI, these humanoid robots. But also simultaneously on the flip side of the equation, if you just integrate most of the AI models that are available to the public right now into a humanoid robot, is going to be able to do a lot of things. Having said that, you see right now that when he integrates the robots into, or puts the robots in a factory setting, they learn certain skills. but they stop learning at a certain point because they've learned all the skills necessary. He goes in detail on how to, he explains all of that. Then he goes a little bit further when he starts talking about the fact that in your own house, it's a little bit more complicated. So there's a lot of room for the robots to learn in the setting of a house. That is the reason why he feels like most people should get these robots and put them in their house so that they can learn about humanity and learn about our uh, qualities, learn about us, and learn how to better serve us and all of that. So he's going to go into that. I just thought to kind of explain that and add those little details. So it's one of those very interesting things. Now on both sides of the spectrum, the benefit to the company is immense, because if you go ahead and get these robots into your house, the company is going to have that robot learn so much, and when that robot learns, they're going to be able to scale it to 100,000 other robots that are going to have the same skill set and be able to learn the same skills that that one robot learns. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens. So if a robot lands in the setting of a house, what happens when the robot is sent to a grocery store to get something? So our relationship with robots is going to start evolving and changing, and human and robots are not a thing of the future. They're here to stay. So all those sci-fi movies you used to see like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, they're actually a reality right now. And people like Brent are making it happen. He's the CEO of, let me get this right. So it says here he's the CEO, founder and CEO of 1X. He's Norwegian. That's very interesting. So he, of course, learned English, which is also impressive. He doesn't particularly have an accent, so that's really impressive as well. So let's go in further and hear what he has to say.
Forget where they started. They started with a lot of people trying to make very narrow models. So if I take an example, if you wanted to make a very good writing assistant to write poetry, then you would, of course, train on all of the best poetry in the world, makes sense. And then it wouldn't really work. And when we started training these models on all of the internet, right, the complete diversity of all human knowledge, they started working. They became kind of smart. They started being able to a certain extent, to reason. And I'd say, like, understand to a certain extent what is the question you're asking and how should I answer. And this is also how we humans learn. We need a large amount of diversity for us to be able to develop into intelligent beings. So why should it be different for robots? And it really begs the question then, what is the equivalent of the internet? How do we find this kind of like internet level diversity of information for our robots? Well, we come to the conclusion that this is probably the home. Now, the home is this beautiful chaotic thing. It's kind of like, well, it's like the messiness that is.
So he goes ahead to start explaining the necessity of a robot being in the house and learning from human beings and creating that social relationship between us human beings and robots. But one last thing I would just like to showcase was when he put the humanoid robot in a simulated house scene or home scene. So let's just see that piece of the video.
And if you kind of follow along in the field, a natural question to ask at this point would be, why doesn't everyone do this? Right, if it's so obvious. Well, it actually turns out it's incredibly hard to make a robot that is safe among people. So robots are traditionally these quite stiff, high energy. You're doing great, Neo. You're doing great. They're this, careful, I don't want to get watered. Stiff machines that are high energy and dangerous. And this is very different from how Neo works. Neo actually has tendons that gets pulled very loosely inspired by human muscle. And this makes Neo into a robot that is quiet, soft, compliant, lightweight, safe, and really able to live among us and learn among us. Oh, let's see if he figures out. It's
Yeah,
a hard one.
yeah.
You can do it, Neo.
Go Neo.
Uh, I said he's the best, right? Okay. So this is still, of course, incredibly early. We're all the way in the beginning of this journey. But I do hope that in not so long, just like we take energy for granted around us, we will be able to take labor around us for granted. And we might soon not even remember the day where there wasn't always like a helping hand available for anything we wanted to do. But as these machines go around in our society and learn, to me, this journey is about a lot more than just you not having to do your laundry. It's about creating a future where we actually have time to focus on what matters to us as humans and getting rid of these constraints. But also, it's an opportunity to really have these machines help us solve some of the outstanding questions that we still have, like, can we have robots build robots? Can we have robots build data centers to progress AI? Can we have robots that build chip fabs to help us?
So he just goes on and kind of explains and expands a little bit on the future. You could check out the entire TEDx TED Talk on TED Talk channel. But now, just for me to summarize everything that he was talking about, this is one of those things that I'm really passionate about, and it's really, really interesting to see. And it's one of those things we've watched in the movies all along, and now it's a reality. So it's one of those cool things to happen in our lifetimes. But here is where it gets interesting. I talked about the intelligence explosion. Intelligence is becoming cheap. Well, I've articulated the meaning of intelligence. You can check out the very, very first episode of this AI New Tech podcast. But intelligence, and to just summarize it, to make it very simplistic, is the ability to acquire a skill and figure out stuff, right? Now, that is cheap. Then you also have cheap labor. So we're headed to a potential utopia. But of course, there's always the downside, which is there could be other applications for technology like this. So when the Wright brothers were coming up with the aeroplane, one of the things that came up in the conversation back in 1903 was the fact that very soon human beings would create planes that could drop bombs. Well, today there are fighter jets. So also now that these robots are here, there would be misapplication. And it comes down to mirroring, now I don't get philosophical, but it comes down to the human condition, right? Everything that human beings do is what these robots are eventually going to do. So that's in itself is kind of scary. But the future is bright. It's one of those things that I really am amazed about. The fact that these technologies are actually here, they're actually real, and they're actually happening, and they are being released in real time. It's not a coincidence. I feel like everything is happening at the same time in the simulation. The AI is getting better, and these humanoid robots are getting better. It's just a matter of finding time before those integration starts coming into play. Now you're going to have a personal assistant that is a humanoid robot that actually can go to the grocery store, do your groceries, clean your house, make your life so much more easier. It's a dream come true for humanity in general, and it's one of those things that we all need to be excited about. But the one thing I would dare say is this: we all need to start paying attention to concepts like artificial intelligence and all these new technology. And these are where the careers of the future are also going to be. So when you think about careers, the careers of the future are going to be in things like this as well. So having said all of that, this episode of the AI New Tech podcast is just to showcase this technology from Brent. He's the founder and CEO of Halo D, then founder and CEO at 1X. One of those very interesting things. So his company is called 1X. He got a bachelor in robotics and nano electronics from the University of Oslo. So he's Norwegian. So having said all that, once more, this is the AI New Tech podcast. The future is bright. You need to start learning. You need to start paying attention to artificial intelligence. If you are not already doing that, this is your one-stop stop. This is your one-stop shop for everything AI. So one thing I also say, in addition to all of this, is that if you got any value from this experience, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. Thank you for your time and thank you for watching. Cheers. Bye.